Namaste. All yoga implies that man's evolution is not complete. It implies that there are greater and higher possibilities, deeper possibilities, which can emerge through certain practices. And perhaps that is the reason why we see within man, as in no other creature, a state of constant discontent. This discontent he expresses initially towards his fellow creatures, towards world, towards God, when he is in crass ignorance. When knowledge begins to dawn a little, he turns inward and sees that the source of discontent is not outside but inside, within his own countless inadequacies and imperfections. Unlike the animal kind, man then strives to get past these imperfections, to mold himself into something more beautiful, something more human-like, or something still greater than human. In fact, in a way, man is meant for yoga. He is hardwired and soft-wired rather for yoga, and that's why we have education is a form of yoga. In ignorance, all education is actually a form of yoga. When we don't understand the deeper profundities of yoga, we at least believe that man's condition can improve, and there are things which are asleep which can emerge through a process of education, call it schooling or whatever else. Normally, this evolution is a very unconscious process. Through the various experiences of life, through the various challenges of life, we begin to grow, hopefully a little wiser, hopefully a little less foolish. Two things that, often, and hopefully a little stronger. So normally this is an unconscious process, and it's a long process. Yoga is to compress this long process into a much shorter time frame, and this can be done if man consciously collaborates in the yogic journey. This unconscious long process is because always within creation, there is a fire of yoga which is burning. It is the divine energy within which is trying to express itself through forms, through qualities, through objects, through names, so on and so forth. But with man, it reaches a point where we can become conscious collaborators in this whole process of the divine expressing himself through creation. This is the background of the yoga. Now, to what extent we can evolve consciously? There we have different schools of yoga which vary according to the extent to which we can evolve and the process that we use to evolve. So, when we speak about the extent to which we can evolve, one of the common things that we get by the term yoga, which is more prachalit nowadays, more popular, is that yoga is for bodily and mental mind health. It is a kind of way of creating harmony between mind and body. Now, this is very inadequate. Because this is something, yes, of course, yoga can do it, but this is not yet bringing out a greater possibility. It's harmonizing the existing possibility. It is like you have a certain arrangement within a room of various objects and you put it in a way that it looks very nice. A wonderful thing to do, but it is not all. So, another kind of yoga is where there are powers asleep within nature. Within the realm of our triple nature, the triple worlds as they are called, which come out. For instance, when people go into Olympic and break records, what do they really bring out? They bring out the possibility of the body. Now, do they call themselves yogis? No, they don't call themselves yogi. they just believe that they must do it better. So this urge to do better with a perseverance and possibly a prayer in the heart, this aspiration for which they leave behind things which ordinarily they would do if they were not to take this journey, brings results. So basically yoga is this triple labor. On one side there is this aspiration to exceed the human limits, which everybody, whether it be Olympics or whether it be any game or music, anything, we have to do that. This aspiration is the common element. The will to improve, the will to go further, to will to go beyond the limits. And the next step is rejection. So if you want to become a Olympian, or if you want to, play a musical instrument very well, there are other distractions which you have to leave behind. You can't say that I'm going to do everything and under the sun and yet reach that peak. So that second process called as rejection. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, there is a lot of importance given to it. Though many yogas don't speak about it, but it is implied within it. How it is implied is that when we speak about concentration as a key element of yoga, we actually cannot concentrate if there are many distracting elements towards which we are drawn. So concentration by its very nature implies, Sri Aurobindo puts it very beautifully in synthesis, if the left arm of yoga is concentration, then the right arm is renunciation. You can't, the two go together. And of course, the third aspect of important limb of yoga is yoga implies that there is a power, state of consciousness that is higher than man. And if we plot it along in, axis of consciousness, then naturally we can say that that state of consciousness is a state of higher consciousness. Call it super consciousness, or it's one of its ranges. So because it is greater than man's consciousness, therefore it can help in the process. In fact, it helps us in the process, though we don't quite realize it. Many times when, we are saved from imminent disaster, many times when a disaster becomes a blessing for us, a curse, seeming curse becomes a blessing, it's because there is a greater consciousness which surrounds our limited life of ignorance. Now, those who are more inclined toward the impersonal just use the word state of consciousness. They somehow don't like to use the word being because, for various reasons. Anyways, whereas those who are inclined towards a personal rapport and relation with the Supreme, they use the word being. But it is understood that a state of greater consciousness is necessarily a being. Because if there is a state in which whatever that is aware of oneself. After all, it is because of consciousness that we become aware of ourselves and aware of everything else. So there is an awareness of oneself, which is what a being is. So when we surrender consciously to this being, then the whole yogic process becomes much more easier, simpler and smoother. So essentially there are two routes that we can take from where we are to where yoga can take us. One is the route of personal tapasya, where we believe that by our own efforts we have to achieve something. So when we take this route, then there is a lot of emphasis on the methods, processes, sometimes to that extent that the real principle is lost. So there are people who become so much focused on the method that they forget that the truth is not about the process. It's like those people who come as a doctor in my profession, who come and say that, Dr. Saab, give me that capsule which was, green and yellow. So I have to tell them that, look, we don't recognize capsules in green and yellow. We recognize them with their pharmaceutical name, not even the brand name. So, but they insist on that because they've forgotten that it's not the color of the capsule, but the content which is helping us. And sometimes one can be easily fooled by these colors, fancy names. People use this. They market. The same thing happens in yoga also. It's marketed. The name will be such which will make you feel, I don't want to take names because, one can be sued for this. But there are names of drugs which make you feel good instantly. It's the same chemical. So that's why, some time back there was this big debate on whether we should use pharmaceutical names or the brand names. But that apart, not to go into that discussion. So there are yogas which are so strict about the method and the externalities that they sometimes lose the essence of yoga. So the essence of yoga is an ascension of human consciousness to that which is beyond. And the beyond is not just sleeping quietly that you ascend. I'll meet you here. Now, there are yogic paths which take it that no, that state is nothing but a vast impersonality and you have to climb by your own efforts. This is what is called as a path of tapasya. Tapasya literally means tap. You gather your consciousness, concentrate it in a small point and it becomes tapas. It becomes intense. And when this endeavor is done with an idea of a spiritual result, then it becomes tapasya. Tapasya is nothing else but a concentrated spiritual endeavor. So this is nothing to do with the dress we wear or what we profess outwardly or the scriptures we have read. It doesn't matter. But if we are able to gather the strings of our consciousness and concentrate with an idea of spiritual evolution, or realizing a spiritual truth, or simply plunging oneself into the arms of the divine, whatever it be, or escaping the limits of the human formula in which we are trapped, then it becomes tapasya. So, tapasya is a concentrated spiritual endeavor. On the other hand, there is the path of surrender. In the path of surrender, it is implied that whatever of our efforts can be, they are efforts of ignorance, and therefore necessarily they will be inadequate. We may think that we are doing something very right or whatever it be according to the book, but it will be inadequate because we are starting from a state of ignorance. But surrender implies that there is a much greater consciousness. We call it divine, Bhagwan, God, doesn't matter. It matters only to the extent that these terms have now developed a certain meanings in our human mind. That's why it matters. Because if you don't give meanings, then it doesn't matter. It's enough to understand that there is a being. So Aurobindo used the word divine because, it's still a word which has not been corrupted. The word God and, all these words have been corrupted over a period of time. So, divine gives the fragrance of something which is perfect, beautiful, and a being at once, and a consciousness. All these are conjured in this term. So this divine being is there to help us. So this little effort that we are putting in, when we offer it to him, then he adds from his side plenty. It's like, I was reading this little story, it's very interesting, that a child goes because he has to get some money for somebody's surgery, and the child takes his little piggy bank, some very small amount, and goes to a hospital, says that, I want my so-and-so father to be operated, but how much money would you need? And the man is at the counter, is shocked because this child is coming with just a little handful of money. But as things would have it, because he has prayed, as the story goes, there is right by his side the cardiac surgeon who happened to be at that point of time. And he said, how much money you have? So he shows that I have this much money, which is hardly anything. And he says, okay, I think this is just enough. This is what we need. And he takes him he undergoes the surgery and comes out. Now, what it means is that basically we put in our efforts. Divine does not give the result based on how many hours we have put in the effort, but on the sincerity. Now this child had that childlike simplicity and sincerity, that I prayed to God and he will take care of me, and he gives all of him, which was maybe very small amount, but it was completeness. So it is this completeness of giving with this sincere aspiration which really brings the effort. So the first thing to understand is the integral yoga is much less of an external process. It is primarily an inner psychological process. That's why Aurobindo uses the word that yoga is practical psychology. So what is meant by this term is that our psychology is not what we read in psychology textbooks, fortunately not. But psychology means a whole range of forces that move us so that the end result is certain actions and its inevitable consequences. So this whole range of forces, we become a student of that forces. And of course, we have the writings from Mother and Aurobindo and the great mystics. The Gita itself explains to us. And we begin to see that how this combination of forces helps or harms us. First step to yoga, when Mother was asked that, what should we do to prepare ourselves for yoga? She says, grow conscious, become conscious. So we become conscious of this whole range which is lying submerged. The first thing that yoga shows us, that outside it looks all orderly. Every human being presents a very nice and neat facade. And that's how the world knows him. And that's how perhaps he knows or he presents himself to the world. Then behind this external facade, there is the other man. And that man, the world does not know. And this man partially knows. Because there also we have very nice pictures about us. If he gets angry, we have an instant justification. I got angry, but it's because of that person. Always there is somebody else. So this is the inner world, which is often in chaos and disorder. And there is a third way of looking at ourselves in terms of psychological understanding, is the way the divine understands us. So the divine doesn't understand us only as a small fraction of time. He understands us as a unique formation of our past. So he knows all the trials and tribulations of the journey, and he also understands us in terms of future, where we are going. There was a lady who used to be, very caustic and very difficult person, and the mother would, deal with her with lot of compassion. Somebody asked Mother, she's so uncouth and such sometimes so crude. Why do you tolerate her with so much? There seems to be an extra compassion. Of course, she tolerates everyone and is full of compassion. But why such an extra compassion? Says, my child, she doesn't know, but I know she has suffered a lot in a previous life. So, the mother knew this. So, while we look at ourselves as, that's how one can understand yoga, like why Shri Krishna is with Arjuna and he gets the special favor from Shri Krishna of even that revelation which yogis have not got. I think after the revelation of the Gita, the revelation of the Supreme, if you really see somebody, the mother speaks about it and Sri Aurobindo. Otherwise, one has had vision of Krishna, one has had vision of the different gods. But this kind of revelation. But Arjuna has it. So Arjuna asks that, my God, I thought you are a friend of mine, but who are you? And then he says, we have fought the battle of the ages. Now Arjuna doesn't know. He is just a Pandu, one of the Pandu Putra and Drona Shishya Arjuna, and he likes Krishna, that's all. But Krishna knows him to be a partner in the great game of life since beginning. So that's why he says, we are partners in the great game of life as Nar Narayana. And of course, you are my Vibhuti. So then he recognizes this new dimension. So this is how the yoga of surrender goes, where we are more and more taken up by God. So the difference is when we try yoga too much on personal effort. Here also effort has to be there. Surrender is not like I'll just sit in one place and suddenly I say that I have surrendered. Now if God wants to move me, He'll move me. Surrender is not that. Surrender is that I'll make my little effort, whatever I can make. But I know the limits of my effort and I'll try to keep improving upon the limits. But I know that ultimately He is there and He is there to overcompensate for the limitations of my own being and limitations of my effort. So when we take an approach like that, we see more and more that the divine begins to take up the yoga and the yoga proceeds with, a much faster pace, much swifter pace, and a much more complete and organic way. Surrender also means that I am not moved by all the appearances. Sometimes people take up yoga with hidden intents. So this also Mother makes it very clear that in the beginning itself one must be clear why one is undertaking the journey of yoga. So one may not speak it. There are many things hidden inside, and people enter into, let us say, a movement or a spiritual path with the idea that now I have taken to a spiritual life and that means God is with me. So He'll make sure that all my relatives, not only myself, everybody in my family and family's family, because there are always extensions of family, the divine is obliged to safeguard them. And if anybody has corona or anything else, that means God has been very unkind. Now this is not a motive even for yoga. Some people have a little nobler motive that I am going to help others because yogis help others. Mother says very dangerous. The first thing one has to understand is only the divine helps. What we can do is we can become channels or instrument. In the beginning, that is the experience one has. That is the divine who acts and we are just channels or instrument. As Dwijendra Lal Roy so beautifully said, Tomar kormo tumi koro ma. Loke bole kori ami. People think I am doing it, but it's you who are doing it. So the next step is that, I am not even an instrument or a channel. There is only the divine and one just takes the delight of the joy of the play. So this is, first thing should be that the motive should be very clear. Why we are engaging in yoga at all. So if it is to help others, this is still a ego. We still want to live within the boundaries. Maybe we'll become a vibhuti, but not really cross that line which marks a transition from ignorance to knowledge. Not that line where we have, even pierced the veil of the subliminal and come in direct contact with the soul. So this motive should be clear. Third motive that many people have is powers. Now there is a lot of idea that yogis, they have all kinds of miraculous powers. Now can be no greater danger than that. Of course powers awaken. But pursuit of power is very different from the spontaneous awakening of powers that happens because one is engaged in yoga. The difference is that when one is pursuing power, these powers can make one very, very egoistic, aggrandized, and even the asura may possess a person who is going on the path of yoga. That's what we see in the story of Ravana. Whereas when these powers come and go, one is always in a state of humility because one knows they don't belong to us. Especially not the general what goes in the name of yoga, but often when we undertake a very serious effort at yoga, so what happens? The divine force begins to act upon us. So what will be hidden before the divine? Nothing. Normally, we have covered everything in nice, comfortable layers. Not only people don't know, even we don't know that there are things within us. But when the divine force acts, it's a power of truth. So things like ambition may get uncovered, things like deep root sexual instincts, all these can get uncovered, and they can topple one because they are, they are not easy forces to handle. Ordinarily, because of the social and other forms of things, forces, they are kept under check. But when the divine force brings it out in all its rawness, in all its capacity, then it can be a very risky thing. That's why surrender is the one which saves us on the path. Self-giving, a constant state of offering, because these are forces much more difficult to handle. So the ambition, again, some people want to be a great yogi because being a yogi is a very big thing. Nowadays it sells a brand yoga. So people like also to be called a yogi. They like to be called a swami. They like that, they hold various kinds of things. I don't want to get into it, but there is money involved when you initiate a person or even for meeting a person. All in the name of yoga, and all is justified because we have to do God's work. Now we should be very careful that if we are moved by ambition or name or fame of any kind, then we are straight opening a abyss on the sides. Even while we walk, we are walking on the path, we don't know when out of this abyss a gaping thing will come and push us down. So all yoga implies that we have to get beyond all these limited motives which move us. So what is the motive for which a yogin then practices the yoga? He practices yoga for the only valid reason for which yoga is done. Yoga means union. So he feels that without the divine, my life is incomplete, inadequate, imperfect. So he pursues the divine for the sake of the divine, for the joy of the divine. And when he starts taking joy in the divine takes joy in him. Or rather, to put it this way, that the divine takes joy in his creation. And when we start taking joy in the divine, that means from our side also, aag idhar bhi barabar ki lagi hui hai, udhar bhi. The fire has now touched equal. That's when bhakti is born. When bhakti is born, then, the path, of course, there will be turbulences, but the path has become relatively easier. Of course, sometimes we don't want to use the word divine, surrender, especially in today's time, man is ultimate. So, man, we have to surrender to a guru, to a master. It's a bit of an anathema in our modern, rationally governed democratic system where all are same and all are equal, and there is a khichdi brewing everywhere. So there is a being greater than me. How can that be? Though it is a foolish idea, but many people don't want to acknowledge a divine. But they can acknowledge that, well, they have a thirst for perfection. It doesn't matter. Divine is not bound to our own ideas and opinions. So it's enough for yoga to understand that we are limited beings, and as long as we are driven by a limited nature and believe that we are this limitation, this limited formation, there is no yoga. So there are people who are very comfortable in their life, just as they are, and that's why it's so much more difficult to make human beings who are seemingly well settled, quite rich, and who have many degrees on their visiting cards, and who are achievers, to turn to yoga because they want to undertake yoga. They are what they are, and that is wonderful. They believe so. But they want to undertake yoga for little health, for little peace of mind, as they call it. But that's not what real yoga is. Yoga implies that even the highest human achievement is nothing compared to what lies beyond us. So this, when we understand it, not because, again, there's so much talk about vairagya. Now, vairagya is of two kinds or three kinds. One is where one is disappointed from life because, one failed in an examination, didn't do well, and therefore says, I want to be a yogi. Well, a person who couldn't grapple with the world is unlikely to be able to grapple with the intense forces that move one when one undertakes the journey of yoga. So, that's why world is a preparation for yoga. How we deal with the world marks us for the yogic journey, and that's why Arjuna is so dear to Sri Krishna. Arjuna is not sitting in a hermitage. Sri Krishna doesn't start teaching him the Gita sitting in a quiet hermitage that, come Arjuna, before the war starts, I will take you in a quiet corner. We'll take a little ticket and go to a nice little place one day before, and I'll give you all the knowledge, even though he has no aspiration for it. And after explaining to him all the things, he says, now fight the war. No. Arjuna is in the middle of the battle. But he wants to know, he knows the limitations of the human mind. He can't even take a decision with all the knowledge that he has. This is our state, by the way, everybody's state. Is there a single decision which we can say is 100% wholeheartedly, convincingly the correct decision? If we really look closely, we'll discover that for every plus there is a minus. That's the state of the mind. Beautifully described in Savitri, that he sees before him imagined garments, not a face. The future flees before him as he walks. His memory stares at a phantom past. This is our state. Man still a child in infants, in nature's mighty hands. In the succession of the moment lives. To a changing present is his narrow right. So this is our state. So if we think we are too much and too big already, then God is very little place, because we may be very big, but it's a big bubble. So if God tries to enter in, the bubble will burst. So he tries to tell us, okay, be happy in the bubble and its rainbow colors. But sometime when he loves us very intensely, he bursts the bubble. That time we go through a crisis. Many times this crisis can become a starting point towards a greater journey. Not because we are disappointed, but because we have seen the inadequacy of life. We have seen its imperfection. And then it can become the starting point of a great, tremendous journey. So this is one kind. Then of course Rajasic Vairagya, where basically we want something and we take this route. And of course Sattvic Vairagya, where we look at life, philosophically we try to understand it. And we understand that, well, life is imperfect because man is imperfect. It's a very simple, logical thing. If we are imperfect, life cannot be perfect. So it's ideal to believe that world will be perfect as long as I remain imperfect. So the logical thing is, even if you want to change the world, first try to arrive at your own perfection. You cannot have perfection in the world if we remain imperfect. So this is the logic behind yoga, that there is a greater consciousness beyond us, and that consciousness will help us. So this limited consciousness is the magic circle of nature in which it binds its creature. And there are countless ways with which it tries to keep it tied here. Have you seen how different business houses and even hospitals and all this do? A doctor, they will give a salary within certain limits. The moment he says, I want to change, I want to go to some other company, so the first thing they will do is they will increase the salary. So they will say, no, don't go, we'll increase. So nature does like that. It's a very old system of nature. So the moment you want to go beyond, because there is a strong urge for yoga, that moment he'll say, wait, we have something to give you, something very nice. Within the worldly frame, you would have never imagined. I'll give you that. Then you start wondering, okay, maybe this is worth it. But a time comes when we understand all is too little that the world can give. Its power and knowledge are the gifts of time. So there are yogis which get carried away by that. Oh, I'm getting this name and fame or whatever else. But there are other yogis who streamroll carrying that also along with them on the path. That's like a mighty river, like Rishi Agastya drinking the ocean. Okay, this has come. You are giving me this. Come along on the great journey. So so what I mean is, there is no one way of doing yoga. It's an inner process. Nobody will understand what's going on inside. Like Sri Ramakrishna gave this example. When we talk about renunciation, it's not about outer. It is the inner state, tyaga. And he gives the example of an elephant. So elephant, if a flea comes and says, I want to make house inside your ear, and the elephant's ear is all the time anyways moving, and the flea thinks it's a yes. So it makes a little house, has children, and after some time says, okay, I think the time has come for me to fly away. I'm so sorry. I know you'll be heartbroken, you'll be very sad, but I have a flea world waiting for me out there. What does elephant do? It walks its way with the same little elephant ears. Okay, go. Of course, if it is too compassionate, it will say, this world is much better than the flea world. But still, if somebody ultimately wants to go, it goes. So the real thing is that the real vairagya is not a disappointment, but an understanding that this world is limited. All yoga starts from that. And the possibility, when we don't undertake yoga, then we just accept it. It is limited. So what can you do? You can do nothing. So live within it. That's the materialistic paradigm. There's the utmost, do good, be good. That's it. But why do good and why be good? Without yoga, we don't have a basis for that. But yoga begins when we understand this limitation, want to go beyond it. And then there are a lot of processes and methods to break through this magic circle. The one thing that helps is aspiration and concentration. Aspiration is the flame. Always within us it is lying buried. Every time when we feel, oh, the world should be a better place. Every time we have this urge that I wish I was a master of this impulse or this tendency within me. Basically, this like a little dot of light or fire spark, but it is soon covered up with plenty of ash. But if we can make it a conscious process and want to go beyond this limited formula of life into that greater consciousness, and which best for the sake of simplicity and also its purity and totality is best to call it divine. The urge for the divine. But this fire has to be fed. So how is this fire fed? How to turn it into an Akhand Jyoti, Alakh Niranjan. So for that Alakh Niranjan, we have to, Alakh Niranjan is of course the grand vision that awaits us. But to turn this fire which waxes and wanes into an Akhand Jyoti is to feed it. How to feed it? Mother gives a very simple way, by offering. What do we offer? The moment we think of offering, we think of something outer. I'll offer my hairs at the feet of the divine. Arey, offer your mundi if you want to offer the head. Guts hai to ye kya char baal phir ug jayega. Some people believe I'll offer a little bit of my purse. So as is your offering, that much is it's not measured by the number of money that you have offered 5,000 out of 5 crores that you are getting. So divine will say, okay, what is the proportion? If he can be calculating, sometimes he can be for the fun of it. Okay, you have offered 1%, all right. 1% of me will help you. But supposing somebody is earning his 5,000 and one has given out of that 1,000 rupees. Now the divine says, this is too much. 1/5 of mine you have claimed by this. So it is not about the quantum but the quality inside. So offering is not just that mechanically one is doing. I offer my day, I offer this thing, I offer that. Offering is an inner state where when we offer, there is that state of adoration, that state of gratitude, that state of joy. There is that clarity that this is what you have given me. You have given me another day. To wake up with this idea that I have got one more day to progress. Thank God night I have slept peacefully or whatever. I am awake now. I have a chance to become better. Every time, every day, the first thought that should come in different, not thought in the same way, but the state that I got a day to become better. And then offer the day with this aspiration, this state of gratitude. Then the offering becomes joyous. Just imagine if you go to somebody's house and he, like a hotel, he gives the dish and you say, this is not good, he takes it away. Says, okay, I'll give you another. That's not what you enjoy. But when you go home to somebody's home and he gives you with joy, and you receive with joy, that's what offering is. When your mom cooks for you, she doesn't say, okay, how much dollar you are going to put. So some people offer like this. I offered this thing, donation. Offering and donation is this basic difference. So when we offer to the divine, it can start in a general way to feed the fire. Wake up in the morning before we WhatsApp anybody else. This day is yours. Take me through this great journey of life, the battle of life. So stay for a few moments in that state of gratitude, inner quietude, offering, aspiration. But it's an integral yoga. So it's not like keep staying in that attitude, whatever happens to the world. Wake up. Want to make a tea. Lord, this tea is yours. Please take a little sip. Have fun with him. He loves it. He is a friend. He is all kinds of relations in yoga we form with the divine. Sri Aurobindo says it's not just he's a guru. Guru means pedestal. Oh, Guruji aaye hain ghar mein. No, he loves to be a friend. He loves to be a playmate. He loves to be a beloved, paramour. What is beloved and paramour? Everybody thinks you love this, that, but secretly he is your beloved. He is the one whom you are disclosing everything. What you cannot disclose to anybody in the world, you tell your beloved. That you know what, this is me. Please help me out. And he will solve your problems. He'll take care of you. So this is the beloved and paramour in the world. So divine is not just, he's the mother. So what is the relation with the mother? Whatever you may do, mother is someone you trust will help you. She may give you a nice tight slap if necessary. But still, she will say, okay, galti to kiya hai. You have done a mistake, but still, I am your mom. Then she will save us from the world. 10,000 million times she will do that. Because she is the mother. And then there is the father. And we turn to the father, he is the nourisher, the nurturer. He takes care of all our needs. So, this is a manifold relation we form with the divine in this yoga, and it comes through offering. When we are taking a bath, when we are dressing ourselves, we can say for a moment, Lord, how do I look? It just turning our mind to the divine. When somebody asks, Mother, what is meant by giving ourselves to God? She's made it so simple. When it is said that you give yourself with the thoughts, means you think about the divine. So you are giving your thoughts. Otherwise, whomever we are thinking about, my thoughts are going there. So that also there is a trick of judo, where that too can be turned toward the divine. But don't try playing a judo unless you are expert in the game. Otherwise, you will be very badly hit. So, but turning our thoughts to the divine is to give our thoughts to the divine. Heart, turn the emotions towards the divine. They can be turned in two ways. One is directly to the divine with all the splendor of a manifold love. Or you are engaged with the world, children, wife, husband, etc., etc., parents and friends and many others. Aspire that may your love become beautiful through all the ups and downs of the journey. So through all these people, you will grow in the power of love, because you are aspiring constantly that your love becomes more and more beautiful. It carries within it the sweetness of the divine. So regardless of what happens to people, that's a different thing, though it does begin to exercise a power on the world around. That's what is meant in the Gita when it is said that the Bhakta of the divine treats everybody as with Maitri and Karuna. Maitri, because that state of friendliness, not because of outer customs, tradition, but because of a deeper consciousness which you begin to experience in everyone, that touch. So all the manifold relations of the heart. What about giving giving your life to the divine? It means that in what is life actually? Life is all the time in movement towards some kind of achievement, progress, the joy of the journey, power. All this is expression of life, passions and everything. Turn them into service of God. And when our life is turned into the service of God, then it begins to start getting the touch of God. Basically, through all these means, we are coming in contact with the divine. So what is meant by, again, giving of life? We can do it in two ways. One is that I entirely do God's work, and only God's work, directly God's work. Or else, whatever work I am doing, I bring into it the element of the divine by an aspiration for perfection, by an aspiration for becoming channels and instruments. So either which way, both ways we can go. And gradually, by offering our life and its energies, then we are no more eyeing on the result. Whether I got promotion or not, whether I got money or not, it becomes irrelevant. Because my work is an offering to the divine. The only thing that matters is whether divine is pleased or not with the work that I have done. And he not only is pleased or displeased. There is nothing like displeased. He sees that where the work lacks in perfection, and he changes us in a way that the work begins to become perfect. That's what is meant by yoga karmasu kaushalam. One is that I do my work well. Second is, in a state of yoga, your work begins to become, kaushalam. It begins to become perfect. And then finally, we give our very body to God. It can go to an extent where even breath and heartbeat can be given to God. So all these are ways by which we feed the flame. And this flame for a long time is still within the magic circle. It doesn't pierce, but it's growing and growing. And as it grows, one begins to feel like a stranger in this world. And one begins to feel there is a chick which is getting ready inside. It kicks here and there. And then as it grows, one begins to feel its glow on the surface, its warmth on the surface. Till one day, the flame is ripe. Paka Ami, Kacha Ami of Sri Ramakrishna. And suddenly there is a gap which is rent. And when the gap is rent, then in traditional yoga, we escape through that gap. We leave this shell. As Kabir Das says, Matki phut gayi. And the water has gone into the ocean. So this is one approach. The pinjara khul gaya and the bird has flown. But this is not integral yoga. Integral yoga is that The flame with it through this opening now aspires for the higher consciousness, the divine, to enter into this matka, this vessel, this patram, this body, mind, heart complex, this world in with all its many-sidedness, and to make it perfect with the divine perfection. It's a far more difficult part, because once you rend the veil through the concentration, there is a tremendous temptation to escape, because by the time you do it, you can already feel a huge difference between the growing divine being within us and the world around. And there is a tendency that once the flame breaks, there is a tendency to withdraw, because one can see the difference. And there are yogis who like it, because it's understandably so. Because it's so difference is so huge. It's literally, if one asks me for an analogy, it's like after having Rajbhog of the divine touch, you are tasting Vishtha, not even the Gud ki mithai. Some are Gud ki mithai, agreed. But there is also the Vishtha element, and how can you enjoy it, savor it? It's like descending into hell. Once that opening has taken place and you have breathed a little bit of that illimitable air, that infinity, the touch of eternity, felt the rhythms of the eternal, then to be here, it's like literally being in a dungeon and hell. Earlier, it looked like heaven. Oh, I have so many children, grandchildren all over, nice photo frames. And my son is in Harvard, my grandchild is already put a green card ka lगा दिया है, line में लंबर है. Then you feel, my God, such a falsehood. Such a stupidity. This is what I felt is life. It's hell. But you enter into hell now consciously. So in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, there is this ascension out of the limited human frame or the formula into the infinity and eternity of the divine. It starts with contact. Initially, it won't be straight away this or that. There will be a contact. Slowly, the contact will grow into friendship. That is how all friendship grows. Initially, please meet, two people meet. Then one of them has to start liking. Then slowly they want to meet again. Then they ring up. Sometimes they just say hello, hi. And slowly it comes, ki, why don't you come and stay over for a few days in my house? God's house, huh? So you go and stay, very nice. Then after some time, through this contact, there is a growing likeness, fondness. You begin to learn so much. I remember as a child playing chess with a master. He was a man in 90s and I was a 16-year-old. But basically he turned me into real chess champion at that time, because he knew so much. He wanted company and I wanted, chess. So we just sat together and over, breakfast, he was all alone. So it was wonderful to learn. So by this growing closeness with the divine, we begin to grow into the likeness of the divine. Meaning thereby our little nature begins to change into the divine supernature. So as we don't escape out of these bounds, that what is that? Chadariya dhardi jun ki tyon. It is not a good chadariya. You can't call it ki meli hui ki nahi. It is already meli. The fact that you take mud and the body of mud, it is meli. You can't, it's just that we didn't make it further soiled. But the chadariya remained whatever it is. So when we go there, we say, Lord, I am so wonderful. Everything is fine with you. Soul is always pure. It is wonderful. He says, but that chadar out there, something can be done about it. So he says, okay, take my super rin, original super rin ki chamkar. Okay, no, I shouldn't take name of any brand, because nowadays all this advertisement. So super divine soap. And he says, take it, divine detergent, apply it on the chadariya. And then slowly as we start doing it, we see what he does is, he doesn't wash spots by spot. This is a mistake that people make. One error, I will clean it. Another error, he says, no. Ye purana ho gaya kapda. This is an old cloth. I'll give you a new one, which doesn't need ironing. And it doesn't undergo any kind of mela nahi hota, it doesn't get soiled. Oh Lord, there is a cloth like that. Yes, I have it. So, what do I have to do for that? Give me the old one, I'll do it. Exchange offer. Give me the old currency, I'll give you the new currency. Now, this is called the exchange of old consciousness with the new consciousness. Meaning thereby we should be ready for all these old movements which are habitually holding on to us to give to the divine. with an aspiration that change it, Lord. So he will take, and one day you will find that, let's say, in a certain, mother uses the word reversal of consciousness. Suddenly, basically, there is a new consciousness. So the world will continue to act upon it. But because this is new and different, your responses, reactions, everything will change. The way we used to react with the old consciousness and respond with the old consciousness, that changes completely. The world has not changed. But slowly the world coming in contact with this new state, again because it enters into the world, radiates, that begins to change. This is how the world is changed through the process of yoga, integral yoga. It's a collective yoga by its very nature. Each of us, as we grow more and more into the divine consciousness, becomes a radiating and transmitting, or receiving and transmitting instruments of the divine, which radiates into this world. And through that process we change. So aspiration, offering, concentration, rejection of all that comes. Rejection should be an automatic process. It should not be a, pained and strained thing. The divine doesn't like that we have left something because, we loved it, but for his sake, imagine to a human being you come and say, I love that, my time I wanted to spend there, but I have come to be with you. You will say, please watch your TV match in my house. Don't. So when we go through that process, when time comes when these things just drop off because your whole being feels that this is not what you want, they will come. And every time from the being there is a cry that this is not what we want. You cannot take that kind of pleasure that one took in it before. And then the rejection process becomes much easier. And yes, as always in all things, surrender is the mainstay of this yoga. This yoga is more based on surrender than anything else. Meaning thereby the greater consciousness has the greater responsibility. And it enters and takes care. Even from the beginning, actually, we realize as we proceed on the journey that much before we even started the yogic process, the mother was already there, holding us in her womb. It was a womb of darkness, and we didn't realize. But all the experiences, including the stifle, the labor pains, the dangerous passage into the world, all this was basically because she was there and she was pushing us in this direction. So yoga is when we surrender is when we recognize, oh, you were already carrying me. And then there is a rapport and a bond. It's like just like a baby in the womb, he surrendered to the mother unconsciously. When he comes out, his first cry is a cry of life, but it is in the hands of the Divine Mother. So that is how we go through life in a state of surrender. Surrender is to give up whatever one is, whatever one does. It starts with offering, but gets perfected into a state. Our destiny, whatever may happen to our life, it implies a state of inner peace. It implies a state of inner happiness, of trust and luminous confidence in the grace. Because I have surrendered my destiny to the Lord. So whatever happens in my life is a passage. She knows best. So surrender automatically gives us that famous or most important element of yogic action, which is equanimity. Because we are in a state of equanimity, because we are no more wanting to do karma with an idea of getting something, and we are in a state of surrender, we know that whatever the appearances, however dark the appearances are, invariably when we are moved by appearances and start having doubts, that means the surrender is not complete. But regardless of appearances, when we understand that there is a divine consciousness working in this earth and within us and in this world, then the surrender is complete. Then we face earth's happenings. As Aurobindo says, I face earth's happenings with an equal soul. All my acts are thine. I do thy works and pass. Victory is thy passage mirrored through fortune's glass. Failure is cradled on thy deathless arms. So this is the state of surrender perfected, which leads to a total equanimity. And all this, when it is created within, at the center of which there is the Divine Mother and not the ego. So that is the most important aspect of integral yoga. Surrender to whom? So people say impersonal, world mother is there everywhere. There is a great truth when it is said, Guru Gobind do khade kake lagu pao. It's not just out of respect. That is a social way of interpreting it. It's because when we surrender to the Guru, in whom we see the Gobind, or who leads us to Gobind, whatever way we want to put it, but who is the representative of the Gobind, then even our outer being has a chance to change and surrender. So that's why when we look at Mother and Sri Aurobindo's photograph, when we read their works, come in contact with them, when we think about them, when we take their names, when we bow down in front of their pictures or at the Samadhi, even the body is participating in it. It's an integral yoga, not just a yoga where we have self-realization inside, but far greater. So therefore, the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, in their present embodiment, that is the significance of the avatar or the embodiment. As Shri Krishna tells in the Gita, that man manava bhav mad bhakta. So now they have come in this way, and with them is the mandate for transformation. So everything can become yoga, and there are ways and means by which we can make the yoga even more faster. In fact, out of their great compassion, like reading Sri Aurobindo's books is a yoga. Reading Savitri, the mother has said, it can take us to the highest realizations of yoga. Simply because it is full of that mantric consciousness, the mantra of transformation, the rhythms that will transform us are embedded within those words. So, such a wonderful means he has given for a whole lifetime. Then, of course, mother's music, mother's voice, their pictures. Mother and Sri Aurobindo said that the mother put something of herself in the picture. It is equally true of Sri Aurobindo. And it is not just a photograph. There is in that picture, all pictures actually carry something of the person's consciousness. And yogis know how to get in contact with the consciousness of the person through a picture. But here they have consciously put it. It's not just a picture. So when we just look at their picture, we are engaging in yoga. It's not a ritual. Of course, we can do it ritualistically, but yet there is a contact which is taking place. So all these many-folded ways they have opened, or many doors they have opened for man. In the end, it's important to understand that each one's journey in this path is unique. Integral yoga is not a brand that one person can put his stamp and say, this is integral yoga. Integral yoga is a many-sided opening and endeavor toward the divine, where each one is uniquely carried. It's the original Sanatan Dharma approach to life, where it's not like everybody who does this is following the path of integral yoga. Even nowadays I hear the term integral yogis, and there are, this type of meditation for integral yoga. Please stay away from all these things which try to reduce integral yoga to again one of those fixed formulas or methods. It is not a formula of method. The least thing that the divine likes is a fixed mechanical formula and method, because every moment he destroys and recreates the whole world in the blink of an eye. We don't realize it. Countless atoms, countless cells, electrons are going out of existence and new ones are emerging. Isn't he engaged in that? Has he not always destroyed the past and brought in something new? So the divine is always moving forward. The moment we fix it into certain fixed dogmas, certain fixed processes, narrow ways, systems, and it can go to any extent. So we must carefully avoid that. It may be very good for one person to follow in a certain way. It may not be good for another person. For one person, it may be important to stay within the ashram. For another person, it may be equally important to stay outside. The core is important. One may stay in the ashram and not open to mother. One may be outside and aspire and open to mother. So core is the important aspect. Other things have their value, have their place, have their context, and most importantly, each one has a unique way of relating with the divine. That's why he created the world. He didn't want to create artificially intelligent robots where all are doing the same thing. How boring it would be to the divine, where lakhs of people are sitting together and doing the same nama or lifting their hands up. The divine will say, my God, I wanted to create variety in this world. And what have you done? You are still again standardizing me, turning me into a mathematical formula. He will break it for sure. So let us take the joy of the journey, the delight of the journey, through this triple labor of aspiration, rejection, surrender, the goal of which is not just an escape from earthly life into the beyond, not even an escape only from the ignorance by realizing that there is a greater truth beyond the soul, the spiritual self. All these are important, but they are only the starting point towards the transformation of earth nature. What is meant by transformation? Right now our nature has limited possibilities. Now, transformation means a progressive evolution and emergence of newer, higher, and eventually the divine powers which are hidden behind, waiting for their moment. And naturally, for it to come into the fullness, even the body must eventually change. Because if you have a highly sophisticated software, you need to little bit, I think, change the hardware. I'm not sure. You can't have the same little hardware and bring in all the. So you need to change a little bit. So eventually, the final consummation of yoga is when the body itself will change, so that instead of the breath and heartbeat of the lower nature which drives it, will be driven directly by the supramental force, the divine force, and the divine Shakti. Breath, speech, act, heartbeat, every action, even the organs, they will undergo a change, till ultimately out of man a new being, a new species will emerge. Not only the human formula will be transcended, but a new being, a new race, a race of divine beings. Right now we are humanized animals. Human animal will be replaced by a divine superhumanity of the future. So with this we can close. If there are any questions, we have 10-15 minutes. Most welcome.
This is so wonderful, sir, and really thankful to you for putting the whole gamut of integral yoga in this 1 hour and setting the context for the whole module. And also really thankful for you for so lucidly explaining integral yoga, the concept of surrender, aspiration. There is one question from Vinit Taneja ji. I would ask
Yes.
him to raise his question. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Alok Bhai. As
Thank you.
always, transfixed and consumed fully. I'm always fascinated and somewhat troubled by the concept of perfection. This is something you talked about, because perfection can also become a pursuit which can be very taxing. So, can
Yes.
you just clarify a
Yes.
little bit as to what should be that bhav?
Yes, very, very good question. I'm grateful for this. Normally, when we use the word perfection, human perfection, we basically mean two things. One is to create an order. And because at a human level, it's very difficult to understand what an order should be, especially when things are changing. So when things are changing, it's very difficult. You have a table arranged, to give a very small example, and you have no new object on the table. Now the whole arrangement should change. So this perfection is not a static state, but a constant dynamic state. First thing, we have to understand this. And the second aspect of perfection is that it should take into the context the totality of things. Now, if I arrange my table, but it is not in sync with the wall, the room, and the room in relation to the house, then obviously that is not in perfection. So the first aspect of perfection is a wholeness. We have to take the totality. So that's why by perfection it means not just one aspect of the divine, to put it one way, not just his peace, not just his bliss, but also love, sweetness, wideness, everything else which, power is included, is unity. At the same time, the individual growth, all these aspects of the divine, the infinity of his whole gamut of divine consciousness and powers, all these have to be taken into consideration. So first thing about perfection is it's a constantly evolving thing. As we evolve the whole, so it requires a tremendous plasticity. At a human level, perfection brings a great problem because, we love to have an order. But every time a new element comes, it creates a disorder. And our mind is not supple. In the beginning it is, but as we grow older, it becomes very difficult. So it becomes very rigid and, it becomes very frustrating. But that's why, because we are in pursuit of the divine perfection, the mind has to be so supple and vast. Two qualities that the mother insisted upon for the supramental creation is vastness and suppleness. So that every time a new element comes in, so the whole thing inside shifts. It is bound to shift. And a new order emerges which is governed more by the divine than my mental notions of what should be and what should not be. So this is one aspect of it. Second is all the human qualities that today we are happy about or seek, they have the divine equivalent and they must evolve from the human to the divine because he is the perfect one. So for example, love as a human love is all right, it's good, it's better than having hate and animosity. But human love is so limited. It's only the divine love which is unconditional. In Savitri, there is a description of the divine being in the world soul, where Aurobindo describes the universal being as one who could love without return for love. So it is something so wonderful. We all want unconditional love, but from somebody else. But we can embody it, provided we understand that human love can be transmuted into its higher equivalent. That's how Savitri explains to that human love first must change its ways to ways divine. And that's why the supramental to lay the base, the right base. Because in the field of falsehood, if love descends, it can, become what it has become. So this is the second aspect, that every human thing, knowledge, there are new ways of knowing. And ultimately knowledge by identity, power itself. So all these aspects have to be upgraded from the human into the divine. So in divine, all contraries. The third aspect of perfection is there are no contraries or sundered parts. It takes everything and gives them a new divine shape. Even what we call as Asura and Deva, which is required at a certain level, the right and wrong, good and evil, they get reconciled because they recover their lost unity. What is falsehood? Falsehood is a twisted shape of truth. But the moment it straightens up, that's why in the Upanishad so beautifully it is spoken of Agni, that which makes the crooked straight. So it's like you reclaim the original shape. There was a distorting mirror which was distorting it. Right now we think falsehood to be discarded, truth to be. Now falsehood has to be changed by an action of truth. Within everything, even the densest darkness, there is a core of light. That's why it's a long process. So it is reclaiming all that has been distorted in the course of the play for the sake of the divines. That's why it's a long process. So in the divine unity, in perfection, there is a state of unity in which all the contradictions between world and God, spirit and matter, soul and nature, all these are healed and reconciled, because the divine is everywhere. So it is that state of perfection towards which we have to climb. It's a long process, one should be prepared for it. Constant adjustment, readjustment. Unlike having a great experience and saying, "Bahut shanti mili thi." So even the peace will keep on changing. There are higher states of consciousness through which peace itself ascends. In nutshell, that's how.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. We'll take one more question. I'm just clubbing due to lack of time.
Yes.
There are two fundamental questions. What do you mean by ego? And is divine the idea of Paramatma?
Okay. So one is about the ego, and the second is about, is divine the idea of Paramatma? Okay. That's it, right?
Yes, sir.
So ego is a limited formation which nature creates to individualize. See, when it is said in the Vedas that why did the divine have this universe? Eko ham bahushyami. So he wants many, many, many divinities. But the thing is, for that, individuals have to be formed so that each individual becomes the divine. Now, to form individuality, you have to create the sense of separation from that unity. It's an apparent separation. It's like the mother gave a very beautiful example, when you have to make ice cream. Now, there are two ways of eating ice cream. One is take a big handi of milk or whatever, please excuse, I don't know much about making ice cream, but put it in the freezer, put some whatever cream or whatever sweet or chocolate, whatever you want to put, and do it, and then take it. That's one way. But there is no individuality of the ice cream. You can't say I'm going to mix all the flavors. But that's not what he wants. So he puts each in different molds. In one mold he puts vanilla, in another he puts butterscotch. In the third, I am exhausted with all my ideas of the different types. Chocolate, okay. So these are different ice creams now. They're all ice cream in a sense, but they're all different in flavor. So divine has created this world to make many, many ice creams. But the first phase, wherein you have to shut it in a container, where there is a difference. So ego does the task of individualizing. That's a very important process for yoga, because if we have not become an individual, we cannot surrender. Now, what it means is that before becoming an individual or the ego individual, we are a mass. We are driven by whatever, WhatsApp message says, "Chalo, jahaj mein ud chalo." So, everybody is flying, holding to the, plane ka tire, and you know what happened? Driven like the mass and the herd. But individuality means I am no more a creature of the mass and the herd. I make my choices. These are ego choices. But I make the choice. Now, this ego itself will, ascend through a hierarchy of nature. There is a tamasic ego. I automatically adopt it when I am born. This my name, my surname, my family, my grandfather. This my family ego, custom, culture, tradition. Then, as I ascend, this is rajasic ego, my achievements. Okay, my family may be whatever, but these are my achievements. This is my visiting card. So this is the Rajasic ego. And then there is the Sattvic ego, where I define myself by my ideas, my ideologies, my thoughts, what I subscribe to. So these are the layers through which the ego ascends. When it reaches the limits of the Sattvic ego, then one realizes that, well, my greatest formulas and shastras cannot help me in everyday life. There is something missing. And then when the mind has become to an extent Sattvic, when there is a Sattvic ego. Sattvic ego is the ego of the self-righteous. I will never do this. Sure enough, divine will say, okay, you said you won't do it. There I come. So then you'll say, oops, I did it again. So we are saying, but the Sattvic ego is where, it's most hard to go beyond. Because one is experiencing the state of self-righteousness. Rajasic and Tamasic ego is relatively easier, especially Rajasic ego. Because the Rajasic man is all the time like a free floater. And he leaps at the divine. But Sattvic man, I am already good. I am a good guy. I am a righteous guy. I am doing nothing wrong. I am a morally perfect human being. Why should I seek the divine? But anyways, so this is the ego mold through which we become individuals. When we become individuals, then we have to start offering it back to the divine, because otherwise offering has no meaning. Swami Vivekananda, when somebody came and told him that, I have come to renounce the world, then he said, what do you have which you can renounce? So first we gather the elements of nature, we create boundaries. This is me, this is not me. This is mine, that is not mine. It's an illusion. But don't break the illusion prematurely. The ego has to go to that point. If you break it prematurely, then we are like that man who says, Mera kuch nahi hai, nothing belongs to me. And then, imagine if Lord Rama took that approach. Anyway, Janki was not mine. Janki belonged to the world. This is all divine creation. Gave a nice lecture. And then what would have happened of Ramayana? Lord Rama would have become another recluse sannyasi. Or Sri Krishna would have said, Arjuna, you have woken up to a great mystic truth. ये सब क्या है? Play है. Duryodhan is not true. You are not. Nothing is true. Only divine is true. It's all illusion. So this is the danger. So ego development is a stage in the process. Through that we develop certain elements of nature through which the soul within us expresses. That's where the Sudharma comes in. That the soul must express itself through nature as an instrument. But initially, these elements of nature which it develops is through the formation of ego. So it is necessary till soul is asleep. So ego is like the manager, when the soul is like the not really Malik to divine hai, uske piche immanent divine hai, but let's say the prince, and the soul is the manager. So when the prince is asleep, then the ego manages. It manages well or bad depending upon. But when the prince wakes up, then says, well, this is never your kingdom. Then the ego may say, come, please take it. Like Sugriv, Lord Rama, you take it. Or it may say, like Kans, no, it's not your kingdom. Akrur is Bandi. Not Akrur, sorry, Agrasen. So Krishna comes and says, anyways, I am going to take it because it doesn't belong to you. So that's when the yoga process starts, when the ego becomes ripe and ready to give itself to the divine. This one part. Second, about divine and Paramatma. Paramatma, by its very definition, is the supreme soul. Now, of course, Paramatma is also divine. I mean, he is the ultimate highest. If you take Jivatma, Atma, and the Paramatma, depending on. But here the word divine is used in two sense. Paramatma is somebody out there. If you want to use the word, it's a static. Whether he's being or whether he is, an impersonal state, doesn't matter. It is a static state. But the divine is at once static and, dynamic. So we can use the divine in two sense. One as the highest state, the Paramatma, the ultimate divine, but also as a state of relative progression. That's why divine is also used as an adjective. Divine quality, divine element, moving toward divinity, a breath of divinity. So divine implies by its very nature that there is, of course, the purest, the perfect, the highest state that one can ever conceive, the Paramatma. But that divine also leans into creation, becomes the soul of the world, becomes the soul within the individual. And also in this whole becoming, he is constantly taking us towards higher and higher aspects. To take the analogy of the Gita, Shri Krishna in his highest is Purushottama. We can use the word Paramatma. But Shri Krishna is not just that. When he's seated on the chariot of Arjuna, leading him through the battlefield, then he is Krishna the avatar, the divine leading man towards through the battle towards a greater becoming. So divine implies by its very nature all that is ever in progress towards something still greater, something more beautiful, and there is no end to this becoming of the divine. So this is the subtle difference. Whereas Paramatma is something static, Param, supreme. He is there. And while he is everywhere, without a doubt, but the word divine conjures within itself that we are constantly in a state of moving towards him. And that which is moving towards him is moving from a lesser divine to a greater divine. To put it like that, we are more divine than maybe the cat or the dog in certain ways. And they look up to us, animal world looks up to us as divinities. But the gods are more divine to us. I mean, not a very good example, but at least in terms of certain capacities, they are. And beyond the gods, there is the Supreme who is even more divine than the gods. So there is a state of moving from lesser, the divine of yesterday, to the divine of the future. This is how divine means also the manifestation. The Supreme is beyond manifestation. So that's the difference. So for those who want to escape from the world, Paramatma is enough. But for those who want a divine manifestation to change, then the divine word is much more accurate and apposite. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful explanation. And this explanation of divine is the first time that I'm hearing that it's an adjective and progressive approach towards the Paramatma divinity. Many thanks to you. We shall end the session with 1 minute of meditative silence, then we can all disperse.